Hi there, Colin Davis, ShadowTechAlchemy.com, SolutioPodcast.com, and MelissaMariMovie.com. So welcome to our Solutio podcast. This is the Tuesday night edition. It's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Texas time, Central Standard Time in the United States. And then we're also doing one some Saturdays. We'll see how it goes, but perhaps the first and the third Saturday of the month. That's what it is right now. And so we can reach Europeans that way. But yeah, so thank you for joining me. And if you haven't been here before and don't know how it works, you can go to SolutioPodcast.com, and I have the phone numbers to call into the show. And there's background on what the show's about, and there's some philosophy, and there's some of my work with Melissa Mari up there, so that you can get an idea of kind of where we're coming from and what's going on. And then you can always comment in the YouTube chat, and I really welcome your comments, because in fact this show is really for you guys. It's like this is not really just about me talking and sharing information, although I'm doing that. This is kind of a Alchemists cafe. It's kind of a place to hang out and kind of imbibe the culture of inner alchemy. And as we go on, people commenting and people calling in, physically calling in. I have 2 call-in numbers, one through WhatsApp and one through Google Voice. You can use the Google Voice number to call in the United States, or you can use WhatsApp to call in anywhere in the world. And the way that works is you just send me a text through one of those 2 numbers, and I'll actually put them on the screen right now, and then I'll probably pull them down and put them back up. But you can always get those numbers at SolutioPodcast.com or in the YouTube description. So if you do want to call in, just send me a text saying, "Hi, what's your name?" and I'll call you back when we get to the portion of the show where we're doing calls. And really, that's what I want this show to be about. I want it to kind of be, I'm going to talk for a while. I'm going to give you some information, and then I'm going to open it up. And as the show goes on over time, hopefully we can get more and more callers, and we can make it more of a community affair. So that's what it's about. Now, I'm gonna pull that down for a little while. So let me tell you what's on the agenda for tonight. Yesterday was the first anniversary of Melissa's death. She passed away on January 5th, which is so interesting because it's my mother's birthday on January 6th. My mother's birthday is January 6th, and Melissa passed away in the evening on January 5th. And I confused the two, and it's very symbolic, actually, and I'll talk about that. But so I'm going to talk to you about that and what we did yesterday and about Melissa. And I'm going to talk about my own anima integration process that I've been going through. And I'll explain how that works with the reality of Melissa being in my life and then Melissa disappearing from my life. And then I'm going to just talk a little bit about the alchemical life in general, and what is it to be an alchemist, And this is definitely an esoteric path, but it is really, I kind of feel like we are at the beginning of you could say it's part of the human potential movement that's always been going on, but I feel like we're at the beginning of a new phase where this kind of inner work that is very related to Carl Jung's work, but it's broader than that, that this will be becoming more and more known and be becoming more and more used, and more people adapting or adopting this type of lifestyle and this way of being. So we'll be talking about all those things. So let us start with the situation with Melissa's passing. And so, first of all, I do want to say that if you would like to learn more about Melissa, I've spent this whole year making a film about her, and it's at Melissa Mari Music. MelissaMariMovie.com. You can get to it through MelissaMariMusic.com also. It's all the same site. But MelissaMariMovie.com, and the trailer's up there. And right now I'm sending it to film festivals, so I can't just publicly release it. But if you'd like to see the movie, just send me a message, and I'll send you over the password and the link, and you can watch the movie about Melissa. And you know, I guess I was going to tell you about her passing and the anniversary, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about Melissa for people who don't know her. So so Melissa was my alchemical partner for 12 years, and Melissa was my soulmate. And Melissa was, in terms of relationships, it was the most important and powerful relationship that I have ever had. And it's almost like a dream. It's like a lucid dream. And so Melissa, came into my life and completely changed me. And I was already on the alchemical path. I was already on the inner healing path. But then to have another alchemist come into my field and into my life, and then who was just as serious about the work as I was. And it was like, there was just no limits, right? There was nothing that could happen in the relationship that would cause us to break up or to regress or to freeze. Every single conflict, everything that could show up that was challenging, we took advantage of that for our own growth, for our own development, and we were both 100% on board with that. So that was just an incredible occurrence, because most people don't have those kind of relationships. But at the same time, most people are not looking for those kind of relationships. And if you are looking for that kind of relationship, well, then the best thing that you can do is really advance yourself. When you're not in a relationship, really work on yourself and do everything you can to understand yourself deeply, to do your shadow work, and to really gain symbolic literacy and gain psychospiritual knowledge. And then if you take that seriously and you put that in the forefront of your attention, then I think your big S self, so to speak, in Jungian terms, will manifest that person for you. And so that's what happened. And if you watch the film, you can get a glimpse as to what our life was like, and especially what Melissa was like, because she was such an incredible human being in so many ways. Like I said, she was willing to take the inner work, she was willing to go all the way to the wall for her own inner healing, for her own maturation, and for her own awakening process. And so that's just, that's so incredibly heroic. And then on top of that, she was just incredibly magnificent singer and musician, performer, songwriter, performance artist. And it's just like one of those things where you see her and you're like, well, why aren't you one of the most well-known, rock stars in the world? But that just wasn't what was supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to, be having that kind of persona-based or ego-based life. For her, it was more about, continual ego deaths and evolving through ego deaths. So, but when I came into her life and I became her producer, because I'm also a musician and a music producer, recording engineer, and so I became her producer, and I just did everything I could to facilitate the flow of her musical genius. And now on the other side of this, now I'm still doing that. I'm still working for her. So I made that film, and I'm putting out her old music, melissamari.bandcamp.com. I'm putting out her old music. I'm making new music out of her stuff. I have one song I made with an AI program where I took her melodies of an unfinished song and lyrics out of her diary and made a new song out of that. So that might be something that I'll continue to do. And I'm going to make more short films and music videos and things like that, because I believe Melissa is such an important person that it's just very important that her legacy be established. And so that's kind of, I think, probably part of the reason she invented me, and I showed up in her movie of life for that reason, and many others. I was carrying her animus, and she was carrying my anima, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But so Melissa had she called it the family virus. Her father died of cancer at age 54. And she had stage 1 cervical cancer when she was in her late 30s, which she beat. And she always wondered if it was going to come back. And this script of her getting cancer again was always trying to run. And that was one of the big things that we were really working on together, was to transcend this script, because we knew that it could take her out. And she always told me, that this is a possibility. And so I didn't really want to believe it. And so we had an incredibly prolific 12 years together. The first 10 was in complete health, and just absolutely prolific, incredibly creative. I mean, it's just like when we got together, and you'll see in the film, basically a whole metaphysical, psychospiritual reaction occurred, and which does happen when people fall in love and you have anima-animus projection. But this was much more than that. This was much deeper than that. And so, we went on this whole alchemical quest, and we studied the shadow incredibly deeply, and we put out the book Shadow Tech, and we started going in that direction of lecturing and doing workshops and all that on about the shadow, and all of our theory and practice and all of that. We were just incredibly prolific in that way. And then we created a progressive rock band called the 01 Experience, 01experience.com. And we put everything into that, and we were just incredibly prolific together. And every day was was amazing, really. Every day was incredibly meaningful and deep. And so, we had the greatest relationship of our lives. And, I'm sure I'll have other relationships, in my life, but it's going to be very interesting to see what those become, because this was very, very powerful and very, it really was, it really matured us both. We both really matured tremendously. So Melissa recontracted this cervical cancer, and this time with everything that we tried to do, everything that we did, all kinds of alternative methods, including the traditional kind of chemo radiation that she never wanted to do. But, everything that everybody reads about on the internet of this and that, we all of it, diet, everything. And Melissa was extremely healthy. She was a total gym rat and really into nutrition and fitness. And she was worked in the natural foods industry for 25 years. And so it's nothing to do with her health. It's a real mystery, but I could tell you, we'll have to talk sometime about the concept of the virus, which I talked about in the last show, the archetype of the virus, which is discussed in Shadow Tech. And the whole idea of the eternal opponent in the structure of reality, in the structure of this simulation. And wherever you're weak, that's where it goes, right? Not only does entropy go there, but what I call subjective destructive agency, active destructive patterns. You could even anthropomorphize it and call them entities or whatever. You could call it Wetiko if you want to, whatever you want to call it, archons, whatever you want to call it. That aspect of the destructive force in the universe is present, ever present. And as alchemists, our job is to strengthen our internal immune system, our psychospiritual immune system, to the point to where that force cannot take us out. And it's happening at the biological level, it's happening at the psychological, at the spiritual, at every level. But there is only so much progress that you can make in one lifetime. And so we talk about, Michael Meade's idea of fate and destiny. So your destiny is your highest purpose that you have to manifest in this lifetime. And your fate is that which is getting in the way of it. And so your job is to manifest your destiny to the greatest extent that you can, despite your fate. And so even if your fate takes you out, if you can succeed with your highest purpose, with your destiny, then it's all good. No big deal. And I can see on the other side of this that Melissa actually did what she was here to do. She did actually mature greatly, and she did, and she created this whole little microculture that I'm broadcasting to you right now. Melissa was the mother of everything that I'm doing in this realm. And so this is another reason why I feel like it's so absolutely important that I continue and grow this culture, because this is, like I said, part of the reason why she chose me. And so she chose me for certain reasons, and I chose her for certain reasons, you could say. This, we are characters in our own movies of life. And so part of one of those things that I have to do now, after being gifted with so much gnosis, that came from our relationship. Now I have to continue on the work. And that was very clear. That was made very clear to me. So Melissa passed January 5th, and yesterday was the year anniversary of that. And it was, I've been grieving her death this whole year, and it's been super hard. I mean, I learned how to cry when we were doing this John Ruskin emotional clearing practice that we called emotional processing in our book. And we have been doing that all the time for years. And so I got very comfortable with crying. And that's great. I was prepared. And so, because I did a lot of it this year. And so I really had to go through that whole, there's it's like I had a limb chopped off, and it's like I had part of me just chopped off, and there's different aspects to that separation. One of them is just a very kind of human mammalian kind of loss of another human being that you're close to, and then they're not there anymore, and so you have that. But then you have this vacuum, this hole where your projections used to go. I used to project a big, my own, you could say in Jungian terminology, my own anima onto her, my own feminine side onto her. She was carrying it for me. And then when she's not there, I'm idolizing her all the time. I'm idolizing her. And then when she's not there, then I kind of like have to do something to put something there. So then I just idolize her, all the paraphernalia that I have, right? Because I have thousands of hours of audio and video recordings, because we knew that what we were doing was important. We knew eventually there would be a movie created. And so I was filming everything, which is another incredible thing. And so I have all this material now, and I have all her music, and she wrote so many songs while we were together, and I have her old music, and I have it all, and it's all so spiritual and so deep. So I can just like keep on projecting onto her if I want to, idolizing her. But when she's not there, I'm aware of how this works psychologically. And so I recognize that it's time to pull that back and to integrate what I was stretching out onto her and integrate it back into myself. So I have to, now everything that I idolized about Melissa I have to recognize as a shadow aspect of myself that needs to come into the light, right? And so now I'm in that process. I'm in that anima integration process. And Melissa, not everything that my anima is actually more encompassing than just my image of Melissa. It's even bigger, because it is in its archetypal essence, it is the divine feminine. And one person can't hold all of that. And so you can have multiple carriers of your anima or your animus for a woman, her divine masculine, and that you can have multiple carriers, and you do have multiple carriers often in your life that take you through different stages of development and of maturation and the ability to, first you project, and then you pull it back, and then you integrate it, and now it becomes part of you, and you go up the spiral. So that's where I am now with it. And I was just like, I didn't even think really that, I had processed so much that I was actually feeling quite a bit better over the last month. After I was done with the film, took me a little while to kind of come down off of that, and then I I started feeling myself again and going, oh, okay, I'm my own person now, because it was like we were so merged. It was like I was her, she was me, and we were just like Siamese twins. And then one is gone, and it's like, oh, me, who am I? What am I here doing? And so I started feeling myself again. But I guess unconsciously I was getting stressed out over this whole anniversary thing. My face started breaking out, and I wasn't sleeping very well. And I was actually having anima integration dreams. Last night I had a number of them actually over the last month. And the one I had last night actually was where Melissa and Michael Jackson were in my dream. And I have to go back to my notes to see, the details of it. But, Michael Jackson represents, in the dream it's interesting because Melissa is an amazing performer like Michael Jackson in a way. And, but Michael Jackson is also this guy who's, confused about his gender and all of that and the whole thing. And so he kind of represents androgyny in a way. So he can be a symbol for androgyny, which is a motif that represents the integration of the contrasexual image, is what the Jungians call it. Anima, animus. And so yeah, and I've been, thankfully I have at least I have Stephanie, my friend Stephanie Mo Davis, to talk to about all this kind of stuff, because she's going through the same thing herself. She also had an alchemical relationship, and she's still integrating, the destruction of that relationship and having to own her own projections. So that's a good thing, to be able to have somebody to talk to about it. And but yeah, so that's been going on, and yeah, and so I just got a message from Megan, who is in Australia, and I invited her to come on the show. So that's great. So it's all working. You just send me a text. Look in the YouTube description or look on SolutioPodcast.com. There's the number. Send me a text. Say you want to get on. Just give me your name, and I will pull you on, and we'll have a conversation. So yes, hello to our friends in the comment chat, and Hess Manification. Oh, Megan's listening now. Hi, Megan. Yeah, if you feel free to comment, and if you want to call in, or if you want me to call you, just let me know, and I will. I'd be happy to bring you on. That'd be great. That's what I'm wanting to do with this show. But I have a few more notes here. I want to talk for a little bit more, maybe for another 20 minutes or something, and then we'll do that if you want to do that. And you're also free to just send me a comment, and I'll address things that way too. But so, yeah, so that's something that. And it's also interesting, like I said earlier, that my mother's birthday is on this. Well, there's a lot. Okay, first of all, there's a ton of synchronicities. They're in the film. So you can, watch the film and see this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of symbolism around Melissa's passing that gives me a lot of clues as to what was going on mythically, within our psychospiritual field, and the archetype of Persephone and all of that, which is a big pattern in Melissa's psyche, and how that's actually part of my anima now. That's actually, it's crazy. It always was in there. It was always in my anima. It was, I got that from my family line, from my mother and my family line, that Persephone pattern, the woman who spends time in the underworld, and And there's two sides to her too, because not only does she have to go down into the underworld repeatedly, but she also is the goddess of springtime. And that is kind of how Melissa was. She was like a 50-50. On one hand, she was just absolutely full of light and life. And on the other hand, she was just like, you know, chained down into hell with Hades or whatever. And although by the time we got together, that the depth of that, the heaviness of that had really lightened up a lot. So the pattern was still going, but it wasn't able to really like crunch her down so far. But yeah, there's just so many, and I don't think I'm going to go on too much more today with all the different symbols and everything. I think I gave you guys a good dose of kind of the of some of the symbolic meaning of Melissa in my life. Let me say something else though. So if you look at your reality as it's a movie, like we had this this phrase, living in the movie, and it's basically just a recreation of that basic understanding, you know, that goes back forever. You know, the Hindu understanding of Maya or Plato's cave, or just the whole very ancient understanding in every esoteric tradition that this is not, that 3D world is not, that the 3D world is an actual projection. It's a dream. We would say it's a simulation now, or they might say it's a play. And you know, it can get very solipsistic if you just think, oh, okay, this whole world is created for my benefit and I'm basically God and this is all just my creation and stuff. That's not what this is. This is the recognition that there is it's Carl Jung's understanding of the objective psyche. The psyche is not just your psyche or his or her psyche individually, it is the psyche. And the psyche is a giant symbolic, energetic ecosystem, and it is projecting and mirroring, and everybody's individual reality is not, you're not seeing objective reality. You're seeing a filtered reality. You're seeing a projected reality. And what shows up in your movie, in your reality, when you start to study it and you start to look at it, is that you can see that there's scripting in it, right? There's symbolic meaning in it, as if a great director like Stanley Kubrick or John Borman or some great director is making this and tucking in all of this incredible symbolism into it and weaving things together symbolically. And so when you look at it that way, it's like Melissa was a character in my movie of life, in my script, who was there to represent aspects of me and was there to take me to the next level of my own awakening. And so it's like she was cast in this role for my benefit, and I was cast in this role for her benefit. And so yeah, let me read your comments here. Synchronicity 76. Hi, so glad to. You know what? I'm going to read your comment just a second, but I'm going to put your chat. I can put it on the screen so other people can see it later. So glad to have come across your channel. I've wanted to seriously learn about shadow work for a while now, but didn't really know where to start. Then this video popped. Well, great. Okay, so you know, with this, you'll be plunging into the deep end here. But oh, and then our friend here is saying that I'm the best. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, for the red pill initiate, let me say something about that. I have a video. If you go to the Shadow Tech Alchemy YouTube I mean, you're on it now watching a YouTube channel. In the videos, there's a video called 2 Paths for the Red-Pilled Initiate. And so I kind of describe this whole, this cultural wave that we see going on right now, where everybody is losing faith in the system, and everybody can see all of the shadow stuff, all of the evil stuff, all of the corruption and everything just pouring out. And it's not one political or, one political team or the other or whatever, it's just pouring out. I heard Michael Tsarian years ago calling it the age of revealing, a Plutonian age. All the shadow is being flushed out right now. And so that is a shocking, in the Matrix, it's the metaphor of the Matrix and taking the red pill and all of that. And then you recognize after you take the red pill that you're living in some kind of a simulation for the benefit of some parasitic culture, some parasitic alien race. And it's an analogy it's actually an incredible film because it's got multiple layers of analogy. But at the political level, the analogy is that you're being manipulated politically, economically, culturally to basically be a slave. And then you wake up to that and you see how you're being manipulated, and then you start getting mad and you start wanting to pull away from it. And then you start wanting to wake other people up and say, hey, look, everybody, we're being manipulated. This is like a plantation here. And the Gnostics have their version and all of that. But so you kind of have to go through that process. You don't have to start with that to do shadow work. You can have a dark night of the soul like I did, and you can pull a Robert Johnson book off the shelf like Owning Your Own Shadow, or Connie Zweig, Meeting the Shadow, or I like a really good book, a newer book is from Robert Augustus Masters. It's called Bringing Your Shadow into the Light, or Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark, or something like that. Great book because it just kind of goes through like 10 or 12 different types of shadow material, and then gives you exercises for getting in touch with that material and getting it up. But so, you can go through that whole thing, and the Jungian culture is sort of the culture where that's really mostly contained, or has been over the years. It's out now, it's out of that box. But there's so much of this, these kind of, that kind of work you can go into, and you don't need to know anything about political red pilling and corruption in the world and stuff. Traditionally, you didn't need to. You could just work with it at your own personal level. But now that we're in this phase where the society, the civilization has degraded to the point to where it's just got so much corruption and everything, you have to look at that because otherwise you're in denial. Otherwise you're bypassing, as they call it. And so you've got to do this work. You've got to you got to do the inner shadow awareness, and then you have to do the external shadow awareness. And it's a lot, And so, and some people go through one first and then they touch on the other one. And I actually hit both of them at the exact same time. And, it was hard for me. This is like 2005. I had a personal dark night of the soul, personally had to start doing my shadow work, personally digging up all my junk. And then I found out all the political corruption and all that kind of stuff, and went down the rabbit hole, so to speak, with all that research and everything. So it was a big hit. And, but so these are initiations. And if you look at the anthropological, sociological work on initiations, actual initiations, some of them, depending on what type and in what culture and all that, but some of them, like for example, the puberty rites of boys in ancient societies, can kill you. So to really be initiated into another stage of consciousness, into a higher level of internal maturation, you gotta hit the wall. It's hard. Now, your own everybody's path is going to be your own path, and not everybody is sort of needs to hit the wall that hard. Some people, like Melissa, had to, and some people really have to, almost die. Like my friend Stephanie or other people, plenty of other people. You need to almost die. For addicts, they call it hitting rock bottom. Some people have to hit rock bottom and hit it multiple times before they start to do this work on themselves. Other people don't need that so much. They just need, a pretty good wake-up call, and it hurts. And then they go, yeah, you know what? I don't want to have any more of these. I'm going to start working on myself. I don't want to have these anymore. And so, it's real athletic work. And so traditionally people would have a therapist, they would have a mentor, they would have a shaman, they would have somebody that they're working with to help them with it, because it's difficult athletic work. But then there's the alchemical relationship, and I can go into that, and that is another way of doing it. And as long as you don't have to have another person that's more advanced than you. You can be at the same level more or less, but you can just be devoted to this, and then you have that partner, right? And so it's just, man, it's nice. It's very helpful. Right, yeah, there we go, right. So, I'm kind of talking now, I'm talking to Synchronicities 76, because you said that you're new to the whole shadow work thing, and I really, I do want to make this broadcast, I wanted to make it very inclusive, you could say. And so I don't want to, I did say it is the deep end of the pool and stuff, but we can go into the shallow end, we can go back into the deep end, back into the so we can go wherever. But I would recommend that you start with Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow, and then get the Robert Augustus Masters book. And you do have to do reading on this path. The alchemical path, the inner wisdom path, the inner development path requires reading. And I know it's hard now. I know, because our brains are just so scrambled because of the internet and the speed of culture and everything. It's harder to read now. I mean, even for me, I was like a legal scholar for a while and stuff, and I was just, read, and plus learning all the psychology and everything. I always read, and I never had good vision, really. So reading was actually hard for me, and I had to push myself, but I always had to read. And now I'm having a hard time reading because we all are. And even though I don't do a whole lot of scrolling or anything, I know that's bad for you. So, I'm not doing too much of that, but we have to read. And, because the best material is in books that were already, written a long time ago. And, or this is how authors are able to, pack a huge amount of information into the whole thing. Oh, Megan is Synchronicities 86. Okay, yeah. Hi. 76. Yes, that's you. Hi. Okay. Right. Okay, good. So I have to tell you how pleased I am with the ability to be able to interact with you guys and have phone calls and texts and stuff like while the show's going on. It's just really great. Yeah. So Megan, I would say get Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow. Write these down. And I can look for you right now online, and I can go, I'll tell you the name of the Robert Augustus Masters. Like I said, I want to learn about shadow work, but just not sure which books to... Yes, definitely. Start with Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. Okay, you're listening to a lot of Jung. Okay, perfect. Okay. Robert Augustus Masters shadow. I'll just do this and for you real quick, and then I'll get back to what I was saying. But bringing your shadow out of the dark. Yeah, so I'm going to give you some direction. So get that Robert A. Johnson, Owning Your Own Shadow. Now, Robert Johnson is kind of who I recommend people start Jungian psychology with. I don't know how many books he has. Let's say he's got 25 or something, but there's probably about 10 main ones. And each one of them deals with one major aspect of Jungian psychology, and he explains it in a very easy way. They're very easy to read, and they're very short. They're like 125, 150 pages max, and so they're easy to read, easy to digest, but they're also very deep. You get that very deep Jungian kind of download from Robert Johnson. Yeah, sure, and because the Jungian stuff can get so deep and so difficult. Carl Jung himself is just like, I don't even recommend that people start with Jung because he's just so difficult. And the language, translated from German from the early 20th century, and it's just not easy to digest. I can read him now, but I have this background now, but it took years to be able to do that. So start with Robert Johnson. If you're women, though, there's a number of good women Jungians. I mean, there's tons of them, really. There's a lot of great Jungian authors out there. But Marion Woodman is the one that kind of comes to mind. And she's incredibly deep. And what's that? Addicted to Perfection. I think that's one of her most famous ones. And Dancing in the Flames. And there's actually a documentary about Marion Woodman called Dancing in the Flames, and you could look it up. You might have to pay for it. It's probably like on Amazon Prime or something like that. Very worth watching to see her path and her kind of multiple initiations that she had to go through, and just very mystical initiations, and then her alchemical relationship with her husband. And so Marion Woodman is very influential to a lot of women who are, and there's others, but I would just say Marion Woodman, Robert Johnson, and Robert A. Johnson, and then that Robert Augustus Masters book, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. That's a really good practical book and easy to read also. And then I also recommend everybody look at Eckhart Tolle's book. Well, he's got two main books. What was the original one that he put out? The Power of Now. And then he's got another one called A New Earth. And they both have at least one chapter on the pain body, which is a kind of a simple but elegant understanding of how we can develop a negative complex, or sort of a grouping of negative complexes in ourselves that we can inherit from our family lineage. That is kind of, that's our self-destructive patterning. And it is very kind of parasitic in a way, and it has like a feeding cycle. And it will interject itself into relationships or into circumstances in our lives, and then it will get fed on our despair. And that is now being explained, I think, more technically through internal family systems, the internal family systems model of psychotherapy. And this is another thing that you can get in if you want to start doing therapy on yourself. I mean, there's all the Jungian type stuff, but it's so deep and takes a while to get affiliated with it. Robert Johnson will take you through all that. But you can look at some videos on internal family systems. And I'm actually reading a new book by my friend Ayan Farvahar, which is it's called like IFS Tips, and can't remember what the whole thing. It's an orange book by him, and it's really good. But I think with IFS, if you're just getting started with shadow work, just read the Robert Johnson book, Owning Your Own Shadow. Look at the Robert Augustus Masters book, and then anything else you want to look at, and look at some videos about IFS. Maybe look at the Eckhart Tolle chapter or two. If you want to look at my books, you can. They tend to be kind of technical. But my last book, which I actually give out for free, shadowtechalchemy.com, just go to the books page and just get on the mailing list, and I send you the book for free. And it's there's a whole chapter on shadow work practices in there. And in there, I describe this emotional processing technique that I think is an essential shadow work practice. And it's developed from John Ruskin, and he called it emotional clearing. But it's a simplified, presentation of it is in my last book, Transforming Darkness. Just grab the PDF of that, and then look in the Shadow Work Practices chapter and look at the description of emotional processing. So that's just basically when you're triggered in life by whatever, by your partner, by circumstances, you're triggered, and the world is triggering you, someone's triggering you, or you just wake up triggered. That's your pain body, that's your complex, that's one of your dissociated parts, they call it in IFS. These are all different kinds of models or terms to describe something that's invisible. Nobody has an accurate description of the psyche and or of the shadow. And so when you're feeling triggered, that's when one of your parts or your complexes is active. And normally the way we deal with that is we usually project or displace that energy out. We blame somebody else. So we have this energy in ourselves, and then we find a target for it out there in the world. And then we say, oh, there's the bad man or the bad woman out there. There's the bad ideology. There's the bad this or the bad that. And then we get to sort of offload our own shadow material. And then we get to take action in the world, which actually physically gets us moving, and then, I got to run away from him or run away from her, or I got to run away from the New World Order or whatever it is we're running away from. And then we get to actually displace it. And so we get caught up in this whole shadow projection and displacement game. And with this method, what you do is you actually say, no, I'm not going to do that. I have this energy. I have this, let's say it could be grief, could be rage. A lot of times there's rage and then there's grief below it. Could be, any kind of shadow emotion whatsoever, fear, any kind of emotional pain, and it could be there. And so what you do with it is, instead of projecting it onto someone or something else, or instead of displacing it through some kind of activity, or even something healthy like going to the gym or something like that, and definitely something unhealthy like drinking or drug use or whatever, instead of that kind of displacement and management strategy, you basically just allow the energy to come up. And you say, yes, I allow this energy to come up in me, and you allow it to come up. You allow it to flush your face. You allow it to come up, and you allow all this anger or grief or whatever the emotion is to enter your whole body and kind of move through your physiology, instead of repressing it and then causing it to either be projected out or causing it to come back on yourself, which is what causes a lot of psychosomatic illness, syndromes and stuff, is people's repressed shadow material that they're not dumping and they're not processing. And so it actually just becomes caustic energy to the psyche. And so with this emotional processing technique, we're just sitting with it. We just go sit on the couch and we just allow it, and we just breathe, and we just allow this energy to come up. And then it usually kind of breaks you down into crying, and then you have to cry through it. And then you're kind of retraining your physiology to move your shadow material. Now in IFS, they'll have you go even deeper, and they'll have you find, what is the dissociated part, hurt part from childhood that feels ostracized or feels hurt or feels, abandoned or feels punished and angry and wanting revenge or whatever it is, some kind of a child part that's there. And you learned how to talk to that part and how to see through its eyes and understand its perspective and start to have a relationship with it. And then it and its what they call protector parts get to calm down. And you start to be able to have a relationship with this. And so that's sort of the more of the, after you get through the emotional processing technique, which is very simple. It's just a movement of energy. It's just saying, yes, let it come out. Then you can get into actually problem solving the inner family, so to speak, that's in trouble. Need to expose the shadow in others as well, accountability. Right, great. Thank you for posting that. That's great. So let me talk about that. Wonderful. See, I love this. You guys are really helping. So, we need to expose the shadow in other people, hold them accountable. That is a certain level that's absolutely necessary. That's where healthy boundaries come in, right? So when you're at the place where you're coming from a situation where you've been having your boundaries walked over, and then you need to be able to form healthy boundaries, be able to stand up for yourself, and not be victimized by other people in the world. So that's an absolutely necessary stage that people have to go through. And so, but you can also see how that, that there are some higher levels of understanding the shadow and projection and the relational shadow and all of this that are beyond just basic boundaries. We can't skip the boundary part though. So when you're working through that, I can't say that it's at any certain age. It isn't really at any certain age. Everybody is kind of working through these things and you're always working with boundaries, because whether you're on the kind of receiving end of being pushed or bullied or whatever, passively or actively, or you're on the other end of it, and you're the one sort of the more masculine side. It could be a woman or a man that's doing the masculine side, that's being the aggressor, actively or passively, and so yes, there is that necessary to form healthy boundaries and not let people walk all over you or project their junk onto you and then just drag you along. So that's definitely like step one, definitely has to be done. But then if you go to this next level of understanding, we can use different models to do this, but we can go back to Eckhart Tolle's model of the pain body. And so I do recommend that because it's simple. So once you realize that, okay, everybody has a shadow, right? Everybody has animalistic, primal, childlike, infantile, all these adjectives, parts of ourselves or energies or patterns that are not really compatible with society or with healthy living, right? So we all have this lower nature in us. And then when we are wounded, when we have difficult childhoods and all of that, then we generate even more quote unquote shadow material that is the leftovers from abuse or neglect or just not fitting in and just not having your basic needs met. And so this forms a kind of back to internal family systems, sort of a dissociated inner family. And so then you have this kind of toxic inner parts relationship. Tolle calls it the pain body. And then your partner, they have that too, right? Because when you get a partner, it's not just like, oh, I met this other person and they're so, we're so aligned, right? You meet another person and you're so aligned and there's compatibility and everything. So you have that part of you is meeting. And then you have your pain body or your internal family, you know, your wounded internal family also meeting. They also feel compatible with the partner. So it's not just that you have, so basically you have it's like the Jekyll and Hyde type of idea. You have your ego has a nice relationship, and then your shadow has a relationship with the other person. And so when you get into conflict with the other person, it's these shadow components are also involved, and they're actually wanting to get activated. Just like how the conscious you is getting high off of all kinds of activity, you know, love and creativity and everything that's going on in the relationship that's so fun and great. And then you have your pain body or your shadow parts, and they're getting high too, but they're getting high on the conflict. They're getting high on the feelings of anger or the feelings of grief or the feelings of resentment or all the things that come after you have a fight, and, you know, the different feelings that are rising up and everything and all that. The pain body's getting high on that. And so so on one hand, you know, you think you have to protect yourself from the other person is aggressing upon you, but you're not recognizing that there's a shadow part that's actually poking them and saying, let's fight, let's play, let's give each other a dose of the yucky stuff. It's yucky to you, but it's energy for them. And so when you start to break this down, and when you and your partner can kind of go to this next level, you can start to see, you start to trace this. You can see, you can once you get out of being so reactive that the other person is doing something to you, then you can each party can start to see, hey, wait a minute, there was a lead up to this. We were being unconscious, and we were unconsciously kind of leading into this conflict. There were things that each party was doing covertly to kind of get the system running. And then it exploded up. And then one party takes the side of the aggressor and the other one takes the side of the victim. And then sometimes they flip. Someone will be the aggressor and victimize the other one. And then that person will say, no, I'm fed up. And then they will attack the other one. So they both can share the same rage and grief. Will get thrown back and forth. It's like a polar circuit, like a game. And you'll realize that every conflict there was a precursor to the conflict. There was unconscious material that was being shared between both parties to trigger the thing from the shadow. And so that's another layer of this after we get to the boundary layer. So let me read your comments now. Right. Yeah, you found a copy of Owning. Oh, you found a copy of it, like maybe free, just sitting there or something like that. That's good. Okay, great. Yeah, definitely read that for sure. I think that's the first book I got into on the shadow. And after all these years, I still think that Robert Johnson, because he's just so elegant and simple, that it's a good starter. And so it's a really good starter. But yeah, so we have this, so this is what's going on behind conflict. And you see this with Israel-Palestine and every other, Russia and Ukraine and all these different fights that are going on at the nation state level, at the tribal level, wherever you have an identification, wherever you have this archetypal ability for this energy to flow, it will be there. And so this is the sort of the shadow game that's going on behind every conflict. And so each individual or each party has their reasons, But that's not the real reasons. The real reasons are unsaid, unspoken, and unrecognized, and they have to do with exiled parts, you could say, shadow dynamics that have to be excavated, and each party in the conflict they're both responsible. Now, when people say, well, what about somebody that you're walking down the street and somebody just runs out at you and hits you over the head with a brick? What was my side of that? And that is not explainable in a basic psychological context. So the context that I just described would be talked about, if in your Jungian therapist, if they were advanced enough, and that would be understood. But when somebody is just, somebody comes out of the blue, or somebody does something to you and you had no prior relationship with them, then you have to kind of go to a much more spiritual understanding of this. And if you will go on this path for as long as you can, if you will go on this path and get to a finer level of perception, you will see that the individual who is harboring a bunch of shadow material is basically sending out a signal, and then other unconscious people are picking up with that signal. So it's not just, a relationship between two people who are in the same room who are having a conflict. You could have people who are in the same city, and they will find each other to have that conflict. And so this whole shadow thing takes you into a very metaphysical, deep place that the majority of society doesn't want to go to. And you will have people that will talk about, parapsychology and telekinesis and ESP and all that kind of stuff. And people are more willing to look at that. But then when you say, well, yeah, the same thing happens with the shadow. The shadow is reaching out. And the shadow is this sort of transpersonal field. And it's connecting with all of us deep in our own unconscious and connecting us together and creating conflict. Then, yeah, a lot of people don't want to look at that. Or they want to mythologize it. And they will say, oh, yeah, that's the archons, right? And they want to adopt some kind of mythological view of it. And the whole Gnostic idea of the archons and all of that, that's real. But that's an anthropomorphization of a psycho-spiritual process. It isn't to be taken literally. So yeah, okay. So now, where am I in my notes? Because I've now been talking for an hour, and if anyone wants to call, I understand that, not everybody wants to call to the show. It's fine enough to just put comments in the thing and have interactions, and we'll talk, and that's how most broadcasts are these days. But I am very open to that, and if anybody wants to call in, just let me know. Just send me a text, and I'll call you, and that'll be great. But in the meantime, I got some other things in my notes here. And so, living with death around the corner. What a paradoxical way of living. What a mystical way of living. Not shoving death out of view, but not falling into it. And this is kind of where we're going. This is kind of what we're doing here. Is that we're allowing the destructive side of the universe in whatever formation, whether it's the political, sociological or whatever, or the relational or the personal, wherever the destructive force in the universe is manifesting, we're basically allowing it to do its thing, allowing it to, just like, look out in nature right now and everybody's killing each other. All these creatures are killing and eating each other, right? And then they're proliferating off the energy of consuming other other living beings. And we're doing it, and they're doing it, and this is the cycle of life. And so we have to allow into our consciousness the reality, the death and life are completely intertwined. It's the yin yang symbol. And so when death comes into our lives, whether it's someone dying, or it's the loss of a job, or loss of a relationship, or the loss of a certain phase of life, we just don't find ourselves interested in what we used to be interested in, and our creative endeavor is kind of crashing, and it's just not our path anymore. Something is dying, and something new hasn't been reborn yet. And then we have to sit in this state of lack, and this liminal state is what the Jungians call it. And so we have to sit in this unknown place, and we have to learn how to be comfortable enough. You're never really comfortable, but tolerate the bottom of the cycle, right? Because it's like the winter in the seasons, and this is all of alchemy, and everything is really just kind of a re-explanation of what the seasons are doing, what nature's doing. But so we have to allow ourselves to be in that state of half dead and half alive. And in there, and just sort of watch the mind, watch the body, watch the feelings, watch the thoughts, watch all the reactions go. And when you're in one of those little ego deaths, you get to actually see what was in your shadow. It starts coming up. All the yucky stuff starts coming up, and you can start cataloging it and go, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, that. That thought, that image, that memory, that feeling. Right, okay, right, because it all starts flooding up. And the thoughts of, oh, why am I such an idiot, and how could I have not seen all the red flags, and blah, blah, blah. All that starts, all the self-deprecating thoughts starts coming up, and the blaming is there, and all the stages of grief and all that stuff. That's all there. It's all there in that pit. And we have to recognize that is part of life, and that will always be there, and that's the shedding of the skin, the old skin, and it hurts and it's yucky, but it has its own time. And then it's recognized that that's also a period of gestation. That dark period, that crash, is a period of gestation of what's next. And your mind will want to grab onto, you'll get ideas of, oh, I see, I might be going here next, or this might be fulfilling, right? Or I lose Melissa, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can start a new relationship with this girl over here, or something like that. The mind tries to grab something so that it doesn't have to go through the process. But the alchemist recognizes this basic cyclical motif, this archetype, the Ouroboros, or the three stages of albedo, or negrito, albedo, rubedo. And everything starts with death. So everything starts with destruction. Everything new starts with destruction. So we allow it. We allow ourselves to go through this. And as you start having all these psychosomatic symptoms, and you're breaking out, and you're getting stomach aches, and you're getting all kinds of pains and aches and headaches and all the junk that comes to the body when you're in these little mini cycles, instead of running to the doctor and, oh no, what's going to happen to me? You realize, no, this is part of the ego death process. and you allow yourself to go through it, and you don't start identifying with some new complex. This is what so many people do. They go through some kind of an initiatory, spiritual emergency, you could call it, or dark night of the soul, and then they manifest some kind of symptom, some latent symptom manifests, and there will always be some doctor to tell you, oh, that's this syndrome out of a book. And then now you identify with that, and then you're like, oh yeah, I have fibromyalgia. I have this or that syndrome or whatever it is. And now you're kind of like, now you're just like, you kind of have an answer for it all. You have like some reason for why you're the way that you are, what's going on with you. And then you don't have to really go mining for the real gold. You could just hang on that simplistic answer and say, oh yeah, it's all because I have this syndrome. I have this genetic disorder. And then you don't have to go deeper. And so that really just stops the initiation. And so it's important to recognize that the tendency for the mind to want to grasp onto and identify with something that it can hold on to so that you don't have to feel just lost in this sea, like up to your nose in the water. But if you understand that this is the alchemical process, this is how it works, and you have that kind of faith that everything is going to work itself out in due time, and that this is your period for attaining wisdom about yourself and wisdom or knowledge about what's in your shadow, and you start working with that material. Just shadow work is basically just becoming conscious of that which is destructive to your ego, to your consciousness, thoughts, feelings, memories, images, anything, any kind of psychological material that, leftovers of wounding, anything, or just primal stuff that everyone has, rage and all kinds of libido energy, sexuality, and, anything that's antithetical to your normal balanced state of mind. Shadow work is just becoming aware of that and just keeping a constant eye on it and going, oh, okay, this is my dark stuff. This is my wounded stuff, right? Not identifying with it, not trying to put a label on it. No, I am this and blah, blah. And you might have to go through a stage where you kind of, you realize it comes from your family and you're like, oh yeah, I got my mom's junk. I got my dad's junk. And it might be tempting at first to kind of want to blame them for dumping it on you. Or this is what my mom or dad did to me or didn't do to me. And that is a stage, and you kind of have to go through that. But ultimately, the gold's not there. That's on the way. It's okay to go through that stage. This is necessary, but that's not the end of it. So shadow work is becoming aware of all of this dark material that we all have. That's part of the Christians have this understanding of the fall, right? In the Garden of Eden and all that, to explain this kind of dichotomy, this split between conscious and unconscious, or good and evil, the light side and the dark side of the human condition. This duality principle that we're all kind of in. And so the shadow work is just an awareness practice at first. That's what it is. It's the first part of it, is just generally it's not too different from just keeping your house clean or keeping your car clean or keeping, things in, not just throwing your garbage out the window or and just letting it rot. You're just like keeping an eye on your lower material and processing it, like I was saying before, and just getting it into your consciousness, journaling it out, talking about it with somebody else, or even just talking into your phone. I use the iPhone voice, what's it called? voice messages, I just talk into it like it's my therapist. I just talk into it every day. I'm talking into it, couple messages every day. I put my dreams in there. It's better to write your dreams down in a journal, but I've been lately just putting them in there because I think I'm going to get an AI program to transcribe everything that's in my audio folder. And so it'll make its way back into my dream journal. So I'm putting my dreams in there. I'm talking to it like it's my friend, like it's my therapist, whatever. And that is integration. That's partially integration. So you're writing it out, you're talking it out, you're making art out of it. If you have a therapist, counselor, mentor, whatever, you're talking to them about it. If you have a deep enough relationship, you're talking to your partner, talking to your spouse about it. And so this is all integration process. And then there's like somatic type stuff, the emotional processing technique I told you about, that's somewhat somatic. And then there's, you can experiment with all kinds of different, exercise and yoga and things to move your body and to get your body moving. If it's aggression, you could be doing boxing or martial arts. I did that for a while. And see my texts here. And diagnosis. Okay. I'm going to read Sandra's message here in just a second. And so, so there's a physical aspect of it, and you're coming at it like a creative person, and you're just basically saying, okay, I need to. First of all, people don't really generally do shadow work and stuff unless they need to. They've had a crash. They've had a medical emergency or some kind of a condition, or they've had a terrible breakup, or they had a loss of a career or something like that. And then they recognize, hey, wait a minute, this is kind of cyclical in my life. This is like, I've seen this before. And I look and you go, oh yeah, my mom's like this, my dad's like this, right? And you can kind of see it. And then oh yeah, look at my friends. I keep getting friends and stuff that we all kind of have the same kind of junk. And trauma drama, Melissa called it. So, so you do this because you have to, because you realize you have an intuition. The alchemist has an intuition that there is a higher, more evolved version of me, and I'm not there yet. And there's something or things that I'm here to do which require me to get to a higher level. That intuition is speaking to you. It's, it becomes more and more conscious. At first it's unconscious, and then you get more conscious. If you're having children, it could simply be, if your children are your most creative thing, it could simply be that you want to be a better parent for your children, right? Or if it's, whatever it is, or whatever your creative genius is, you realize that in order for that to become as good as it can be, and for you to feel the most sense of meaning and purpose in life, that you kind of have to drop some of this load of junk. And otherwise you get a feeling that you might, not really achieve your highest purpose. And you go on this path, this refinement path, cleansing path, refinement path. And then you make a lifestyle out of it. And one of the things that I'm trying to do here with this program, or just in life now, especially after Melissa's gone now, because when Melissa was here, we did share our information, definitely, but our relationship was such a prolific container that we could kind of just entertain ourselves and evolve ourselves, and we didn't really have to be so communal. But now I'm like, the modern society is on what is this phrase? I heard Stephanie told me this. We have what is the deal? We have medieval institutions, we have Paleolithic emotions, and futuristic technology. It's kind of how we are, right? As modern people. And so we have a lot of work to do. And the whole society is not going to wake up or do their inner work or do their shadow work. That's not going to happen in our lifetimes or ever. The way this happens is incrementally over generations. And there have to be people who are at the cutting edge, there have to be people who are pushing the edge of that, pushing the limits of that. That's the way it is for the evolution of everything in history. There have to be people, spiritual people or scientists or shaman or whatever. They have to be pushing the cutting edge. And then they have to be figuring it out and then training other people, mentoring other people, and bringing other people into that discipline and pushing the cutting edge and evolving that aspect of human consciousness. And so we have always had some kind of, every civilization has some kind of psycho-spiritual development, culture, especially in the East. That's more well understood. That in the East, you have these forms of yoga and tantra or different kinds of Buddhism and shamanic practices of all kinds and stuff, alchemy of all kinds, and it's more recognized in the East. In the West, it's been suppressed. So this is one of the reasons why people, I think, in this area often have to go to Carl Jung, because he kind of was the grandfather of this. He kind of brought all of this, technology, this shamanic technology, you could say, and he kind of recapitulated it into modern language and understandings, and then advanced it from there, and did it in a way that was coherent with the Western mind. And in some ways, people might think it's actually, you got to go to the East for some stuff to be even more advanced, but he was doing it within the context of the esoteric tradition of the West. And so we're building on that. And so one of the things I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get the point across that this is a movement. This is the human potential movement. This is a vein of it. This is kind of a continuation of the Jungian school, but we are a different people are doing this are mainly Gen Xers and millennials, and we have a different society, we're a different generation, we have a different culture, a different mindset, and we have a lot of information available to us that wasn't there before, and we're kind of pulled out of all the Christian dogma now isn't as powerful and it isn't as heavy on us anymore. So, and what I'm trying to say is that as we start to see the pillars of modern civilization really crumble, and it's just harder and harder to make a case for why an individual should kind of follow the rules and, get a normal job, get a career, get a degree, get a career, do all of that, buy a house, have 2 children, blah, 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 and have the, happily ever after little family thing. And I mean, I think having a family is probably the greatest thing anyone can do. But what I'm trying to say is that that picture perfect kind of model of what we're supposed to do, and there's all these different versions of it, blue collar, white collar, whatever it is, and the doctors and or whatever version of you think is success. That's all like looking like impossible now. Just the cost of living and everything, and just the lack of community and dissociation from nature, and just the whole modern, especially America's got it the worst. America is sort of at the cutting edge of decline of this whole thing. And it's like you're looking at it and you're going, what do I even have to do with that? Why do I have to even play that game? Oh, go buy a house for hundreds of thousands of dollars and then end up paying it back over 30 or more years or whatever at 2 times what you paid for it or more. And it's like, and the thing's constantly breaking, and it's so expensive, and the taxes and everything, just to put a stupid roof over your head. And you're like, I got to go work and slave for 40 or 50 or 60 hours in the Matrix just to put a roof over my head and food in my mouth and feed and clothe my children. When back in 1960, you could do all that on being a janitor or something. And I mean, my relatives, I have relatives that were professional musicians, and they actually could retire on a pension and have a whole life just being a live musician. I mean, that's absolutely impossible now. Nobody can do that. So people are looking at this world, and they're just, even people who are not alchemists are looking at this and going, that's not for me. And what I'm saying is this is a whole other, deeper, more meaningful, just freaking awesome way of living, truthfully, because you can be in any situation, anywhere in the world. And when you're on this path, your life is incredibly meaningful. And there's just everything, you can mine everything for meaning, even the worst situations that happen. I lost Melissa a year ago, and it was one of the worst things that could possibly happen to me. But I mined it for so much meaning that I turned it into evolution for myself. And that's what you can do with any situation when you're on this path and you have this basic toolkit. So this is not just something that people that need to work on themselves because, they feel like shit and they want to feel better. It's not just that. This is a whole way of this is just a more advanced, this is second tier in integral theory. This is like second tier living. This is a whole more advanced way of living. On one hand, it's very natural and old school, and on the other hand, it's very cutting edge. Let me see what you guys are saying here in the comments. Oh, well, you're welcome, Megan. You're thanking me for sharing. No, of course, yes. Well, I'm thank you for saying that because that's my goal, because I can be very technical and I can talk over people's heads and all of that. And so now I don't want to do that. I want to be deep, and I want to be informative, and I want to connect with you. Hi Theo, how are you? And godlike tech. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, we have medieval institutions, Paleolithic emotions, and godlike tech. And so yeah, so we're really in this kind of and it would be okay if we were kind of unconscious, like the way we were in the Western world. We're all Westerners here, pretty much, I'm sure. And we just had this whole 300-year, peak. We had first we had the Renaissance, then we had the Enlightenment and the Protestant Reformation, and the foundation of America, and all of that, and the whole. It's called the orange meme in spiral dynamics or integral theory. Modernity and the Industrial Revolution and science and progress and all of this and the standard of living and all this kind of stuff, right? We got all this last 300 years. And then the last 100 years, just been this, right, of prosperity. And now we live these just, I think we still are, we kind of just substituted one type of anxiety for other types of anxiety. But to a degree, we also really made life easier for ourselves. But now we've kind of passed peak on that, and we're cracking up and going insane on the collective. And so we as individuals, we the alchemists, we the ones who are becoming more self-aware, we the ones who are maturing ourselves, waking up, we're going the other direction. I'm here in Texas. I go to the grocery store. I tell Stephanie about this all the time. I go to the grocery store, go to HEB. That's what it's called out here, the main grocery store chain. And it's just the people are just completely unconscious, totally unhealthy, just totally unhealthy, unconscious, dumbed down. And I don't mean to be rude or anything like that, because I just don't want to, be too judgmental, but I have to look at it objectively and go, wow. And then I go to other places, like in Europe. Like my one country that I visit a lot and have friends there is Holland. I go to Holland, I look at the people, and I'm like, they do not look all unhealthy and dumbed down and, carrying 150 pounds extra weight and all of that. And they are intelligent, even at a young age. I can talk, relatively advanced with an 18-year-old over there. I have that same conversation with somebody that's 40 or 50 over here, and it's like, they can't even, it doesn't even compute. So we are, in some parts of our civilization, very degraded. And so they're going downhill, unfortunately. And then we're going up. We're going against that stream, against that flow. So we're a whole other culture. And I'm trying to, good, I'm glad it makes sense. Yeah, and if there's anything that doesn't make sense, just, let me know, and I'll try to explain myself better. But so we are so we're on it. We're on another path, and I'm really, this is kind of like I'm trying to be a missionary about the whole thing, and not just teach shadow work or just be kind of somebody that teaches a discipline or a process or a practice or does a workshop and now this tool. That's kind of part of it, but that's not really the biggest part of it. The biggest part of it is to help people get excited about this path, and how that if you go on this path you're not alone. And not only are there a lot of resources out there, that's nice. There's a lot of resources. There's people that have gone on this path. And so we have resources, and you kind of come into this community, into this culture, and you can find out what they are and start using them. But also that we support each other. And I it's very important to not have like economics involved in this. Even though I offer, coaching to people, and people do, hire me for that, but that's just kind of like there. And that's not why I'm doing this. And so that's not I'm also an audio engineer. And truthfully, I have to kind of figure out how to actually make a living better, because my audio engineering work is kind of crashing, and it has been for the last, that whole field is like one of those fields that's been going away or getting harder and harder to make a living at. So that is one of the challenges for me. But as far as what I'm doing here, I'm really trying to say, okay, no, this is a work of passion that I cannot be putting a paywall in front of having community and supporting people and learning from other people. Can't do it. I'm not going to do that. So that's very important to me. Okay, great. Are we all caught up? Does anybody want to call? We have another 20 minutes. You don't have to. I'm not trying to push it on anybody. And I think maybe eventually, if folks keep hanging out, then we'll end up talking on the phone, and that's fine. So I think I did talk. I kind of went through. This was the portion of my notes called the alchemical life, or the alchemist life, and I did describe a lot of these things in here, and maybe I got a few more notes in here, and I have the alchemical relationship in here. And you'll see, if you guys hang out with me, you'll see that I talk about a lot of the same, like everybody does, different modules. Kind of have a list right here of just like 12 things on there, 12 or 15 things that are kind of like the main things that Melissa and I always worked with. and I'll probably add some more. But you'll kind of hear me kind of going through these things and maybe getting better at explaining them. And then the more you talk to me, comment or call me, and I can kind of put this information into your personal situation, then that will, open up all these things, because I can share this information with you, but we need to have conversations so that we can pull it apart and apply it to your life. So, yeah, Earthkeeper 13, you're seeing a bifurcation. You are definitely seeing a bifurcation. And I don't even think it's a bifurcation, but it's like, it's a lot of different split off paths that people are going through. And, oh my God, I almost forgot about Sandra. Sandra, I'm sorry. Sorry, you're who I'm going to talk to right now. Because she's texting me on my other phone that I don't usually use for this. So, okay. We shall write a story about my experience. Oh, you're talking to me about something else. About your experiences in China in the 1970s. People need to be willing to get tested for different things once they find out if they have different infections or cancer. Oh, Sandra. Okay. This is a good subject. How do you interface? Yeah, I know you don't like doctors. Neither do I. I haven't seen a doctor since 1995. And women really, the whole society has really, I mean, this is kind of an archetypal thing. This is kind of a daddy thing. But the whole thing of, and I could, I understand that women have certain, physical properties that makes it more likely for them to go to the doctor more often. But I mean, I look at my mom and stuff. She's just basically dating her doctor, and the way I am with the testing and all this kind of stuff is I'm not going to do it, man. I'm just not going to do it. If some people want to do it, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be going to the doctor and getting tested for everything, because I see how the psyche works. I see how it will latch on to different syndromes and stuff, and the doctors are always ready to open up the book, the DSM or whatever book, and throw some label on something and interpret your blood work in this way and that way, and then, oh, you need more tests, and oh, you might have this, and oh, you might have that, and just take you down that whole pit. And then that just makes you become fearful, and then that just wrecks your immune system, and then that just contributes to the whole thing and all of that. At the same time, there is a practical reason for certain testing and stuff. I don't think that women getting mammograms every year and all, I don't, that doesn't, no. Getting irradiated every year to see if you get cancer, it just doesn't make sense to me. And there's so much fraud, and we saw after the whole COVID thing, everybody kind of, not everybody, a lot of people woke up to that whole thing. We're now seeing how much fraud. Stephanie would be a good person to talk to about this whole conundrum here. Sandra's never had a vaccination, me neither. But, yeah, he's never had a mammogram. That's good. Yeah, I know you never had a COVID vaccination. Yeah. It is kind of a fine line. And, if you have for example, Melissa, people might say, well, if she had been getting tested, she'd be getting pap smears and stuff after she got her first episode of cervical cancer, then she might have caught the cancer earlier, and then she could have maybe beat it. But that wasn't the way she wanted to run her life. She did not want to be just living in fear and tiptoeing around all the time. She lived very healthy, but she just wasn't going to do it. And she kind of was just like, well, I'm just going to live my best life. And if it's my turn to check out, well, then it'll be my turn. And that is what she said. And that's kind of how she approached it. And And so I'm not going to say people shouldn't go to the doctor or they shouldn't get tested for this or that or the other, but you do have to really balance that and recognize it. You have to look inside of yourself and find, where is the fear? If you don't go to the doctor this year for your yearly checkup and this, that, or the other, try it sometime. Try not going. Cancel the appointment and then see what comes up. And then work with that material, because now you know that there's a complex, there's a pattern, there's a fear that's in there that's feeding this whole doctor thing. And we don't want to go to the doctor because we have some kind of scared complex in us that's pushing us in that direction. We want to go for the most pragmatic reasons. And so I think it's a fine line with the doctor thing. Doctors do save people's lives. Penicillin did, if my grandfather lost his hearing in one ear because he had an infection in his ear and he couldn't take penicillin, or did they even have penicillin? I think they did have it, but he couldn't take it or whatever. So I'm not going to say, all medicine is a fraud. It's just not. That's just not true at all. But we have to be very careful with that and not get addicted to the medical system, because it's very parasitic right now. So, but what I was going to say, I think, is I don't think we have time today. I'm just going to do 2 hours each. If you guys have something going with me, you're calling or you're commenting and we're talking, I'm not going to shut it off at 2 hours. But generally, I kind of want everybody to kind of get their stuff in that time, because on these Tuesdays, I haven't cooked dinner or anything like that, and it'll be 9 p.m. when I get off here. And so I have to go cook dinner and stuff. And now I don't have Melissa to cook my dinner for me. And she was such a good cook. She was just so good at it, and she loved doing it. And so, but I'm thankful that I kind of learned how to cook from being with her. Thankfully, that rubbed off. Oh, you're hungry too, yeah. By the way, I'm talking to Melissa's sister right here. And again, I want to encourage anybody who hasn't seen the movie about her, go to Melissa Mari, M-A-R-I, melissamarimovie.com. Watch the trailer, and if you think that that's up your alley, send me a message, and I'll send you the link to the movie with the password and stuff. And no pressure, too. I was talking to Stephanie about this today. No pressure on that. This is a deep movie, and Melissa was a very, very deep and Persephonic, you could say, character. And I do think that for alchemists, I think they would be served by this. And even that's not even the deepest. I could have made a way deeper, even more powerful and rougher movie, but I didn't. I had so much material to go through. I wanted to tell this longer story, so it's just really, it's not even nearly as deep as scary as it could be. But and a lot of women who have had these kind of many trips down into the underworld, I've noticed that they really resonate with Melissa, and she's just I think such a heroic character that she's I'm always going to keep pushing that movie and whatever movies I make about her. But I'm talking to her sister here. That's Sandra. So the alchemical relationship. We're going to talk about that next week. And I'll always be talking about it. And but that was also on my list for things to talk about today. And we did talk about it a little bit, for sure. But we didn't really get that deep into it. So we'll talk about that more. And that is really a very, very powerful and evolutionary way of working on yourself, is with an equal partner. And then the last thing I have on my list here was the introvert addiction versus the need to go inwards. The total extrovert, here's my notes here. The total extrovert is not the alchemist, but can and should learn inner work skills, and certainly needs a more introverted therapist. So I've taken tests like Jungian tests and stuff, and from what I remember, my sort of the way I came out on introvert extrovert was kind of like 55% introvert to 45% extrovert, and sounds about right, feels about right. You know, I'm kind of halfway. I got my extroverted, you know, being a performer, musician, and all of that, but then I also have this obviously deep need to have alone time and be, you know, introverted and studying and always never getting too busy to where I'm losing track of my inner state and my inner balance. I never like to get too busy. I can't really do matrix life that much. I kind of have to be creative about my lifestyle so that I don't have to get just totally overwhelmed by some rat race life. Can't do it. And I don't know if any alchemist really can do that. This is not what we do. We have to have this kind of work-life balance. But there is also a way that, you know, you can get addicted to these sort of a shadow complex, you could say, or yeah, it's like a shadow complex, a shadow archetype, or a Persephone, or some kind of an orphan type archetype, and you could kind of just, or trying to looking for words to explain it. You can get really, especially if you can afford to live this way. You know, if you don't have to be tripped out about, you know, working too much or whatever. People can get very tucked into their inner world. And the alchemist can actually get a lot of meaning out of just being in their inner world and studying and journaling and watching themselves and analyzing their dreams and really being an artist. You know, a lot of people on this path are artists. I mean, we're all kind of artists. And you can just get involved in your art and kind of just be in your little, you know, your cave, and you can get very comfortable in your cave. But then a lot of people have a purpose in life that requires them to be in the world. Not everyone does, actually. There are people who are just, you know, artist creators that are just supposed to be in the cave and leave the marketing and all that up to somebody else and just kind of be in there, in the recording studio or whatever. But most of them even have an extroverted side to them. They got to get on stage. They got to play. They got to go do something. They got to do a gallery showings. They have some kind of external life. And so we don't want to get just completely addicted to being on the inside and being completely internal and introverted and getting in our shell and pulling away from our communal duties or whatever it is that we need to do in the world. So on one hand, the Western culture is completely addicted to extroversion. It's totally introverted and completely out of balance. And most people, especially in America, don't really have a whole lot of it. They don't have a deep inner life. And then there's the alchemist, the mystic, the shaman type that is just in there all the time and doesn't have an outer life. And so it's about balance. That's what this whole path is about. Sandra, you should comment. I should tell you this. You should comment on the YouTube chat, because then I can, you know, address you on there and other people can see your stuff. I would like other people to see your comments. Yeah, I want to see your comments on the YouTube chat. You're mostly introvert, but need to be extrovert at times. Yes, you have a pretty good. You are an introvert, but you also have a you have a pretty good extrovert. You're always involved in some kind of public service and being on the city council or doing something that's, out there. Yeah, I love you too. Sandra, there's so many texts there for me to have to go through right now, but so yes, so there we go, guys. It's funny how have you guys noticed that YouTubers always say guys, because most YouTubers are men, and I think YouTubers figured it out, so they say hey guys, but I think it's also just part of we say that meaning men and women, but I did notice a lot of YouTubers say hey guys. Is there anything else anybody wants to mention and or work on before we head out for the evening? I think we had a really good talk here, and I want to thank you guys for contributing and for all your comments. You really made the show so much better than it would have been just me giving some kind of presentation. And I want to, I want to serve you. So you can either comment here, you can send me private messages, private emails, if you want me to talk about certain things. If you want me to talk about your situation, maybe you don't want to come on the phone, but you want me to anonymize it, I will. You want me to talk, you want to tell me I'm here to help work through real life situations and apply what we're talking about here to real life situations. And so there we go. I think I've gotten to everybody there. And yeah. Okay. We'll hang out for another minute or something and see if anybody has something, because I noticed that the chat is delayed. It's delayed like 30 seconds or something. I guess I can look at Sandra's texts now. You can be in there. Great. That's great. I like that. You can be in the chat. That's really great. Yes, that would be great. Why did I say that I love doctors? I say that to a lot of women just as a tease to wake them up. YouTube chat wasn't working? Yes, YouTube chat is working. I got people on there. Everybody's chatting. Let me see here. Let me set this to top chat versus live chat. I'm figuring this out. Let me see here if there's any difference. No difference. Right. Yeah, okay. Alrighty, folks. So SolutioPodcast.com, ShadowTechAlchemy.com, MelissaMariMovie.com. And we'll be doing these every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Texas time. I don't know what time that is in Australia for Megan, but it's during the day, so apparently that works for that time zone, which is great. And then I did one on Saturday, and it didn't reach that many people because I think still the Europeans don't know about this show yet. So I'm going to keep doing it so that folks over there can get a chance to get involved. And so that will be 1 p.m. every first and third Saturday. I think I'm doing it. But in general, it'll be every Tuesday at this time, 7 p.m. Texas. And so I look forward to seeing you all next Saturday. I'm tired. I look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday or the following Saturday. And thank you again. And I think I'm going to sign off now. And so take care. Thanks, everybody.